Well, hi, Juan. I'm very
How's it
pleased to
going?
meet you. My name's Tom. I've been interviewing photographers for over 25 years now,
Wow.
and you are the first photographer that I've interviewed in VR. You're also the first photographer who I've spoken to who knows what VR is and is interested in it
Yeah.
and sees possibilities for it. Um, so you're obviously ahead of the curve. Um, could you speak a little bit about how you first got involved in VR and how you got involved in this project?
Yeah. So Danielle over at Meta reached out. And at first I was a little nervous because I didn't know what it was. But I
Hmm.
think the cool part of it all was that the future, everything is always changing. And it's always cool to adapt with the times. So I felt like I was like, wow, like just step into it. Like you don't know what can come out of this. So I'm just over the moon to know that I'm a part of this reality and experience because
Mm,
it's different and I'm really big on just accepting change in my career or just like with the next steps. It just makes it fun and you don't always have to do what feels normal. It's cool to just change it up sometimes. So yeah, I'm glad I'm stepping into this world. Yeah.
great to hear. Yeah. Well, I mean, virtual reality means we can be talking like this as if we're next to each other. I'm in the north of England, you're in Los Angeles. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But as a photographer specifically, where do you see VR fitting in with what you do, other than doing things like this?
Yeah. I think the cool part of everything with VR and photography is that it can be whatever you want it to be and make it a
Mm.
reality in what we can say. Um, Down to like maybe making a gallery and making like you're just stepping into that photo and just seeing the story of that photo walking through a gallery
Mm.
space. So I think there's like it's like limitless of just what can happen with photography and VR because you just make it what you want to make it and it's your world that people are stepping into and I think that's the cool part of everything like with VR and photography or just art in general. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the project we've been talking about is, I'm sorry, but I don't speak Spanish, so my
Yeah.
pronunciation will be terrible. Nueva Norte, which is this world that's been created by Koval to convey Latinx culture within
Yeah.
virtual worlds. Have you sort of explored this world and what did you think of it?
I love Nuevo Norte. It was
Mm.
kind of like a warmth blanket of my childhood, if that
Mm,
makes sense. It felt so good and so warm again because it was true to Latinos. It was true to Latinx artists, people who can relate to this. And I think that was the cool part of it all, that it was authentic and it wasn't forced. Bringing in
mm,
someone who actually knows the culture, who speaks it, who lives through it day and night. It was genius. It was genius, and Koval is like an amazing artist, and she's just a genius. So it was a beautiful
yeah,
experience, and it was comfortable. I felt good in it. Yeah,
yeah, which is quite impressive considering, um, yeah, as an Englishman, again, I'm not particularly aware of this, but
yeah,
Latin culture does spread across, well, an entire continent and has so many different facets. So the
right.
idea that it could be brought together in a way that connected with you and other people, is impressive. Um, and as I understand it, that's something that's part of your work as well, that you feel that your identity informs your photography. Um,
Absolutely.
has that always been the case? Is that something that you've come to later in life, or has it always been the case that your Latin background has influenced your photography?
Oh, it's been my MO since I picked up a camera. It was always I started photography because my grandmother always spoke about she didn't have any images of herself growing up in the Dominican Republic. So I was like, I
Mm,
can document my family. Like I think, and as my career just kept going, I'm like, I never want to forget the root of it all, the foundation of it all. It was because I started taking
mm,
photos of my grandmother and my family. So I don't care what project I do, I always bring a part of that moment I first picked up a camera is always with me to this day. So yeah, it's a
Wow.
huge part of my career. Yeah, I'm always very
Yeah.
much like I'm kind of giving young Juan his flowers and also my family their flowers because I'm trying to with any project that I do, I'm protecting my culture and like kind of just like creating this bubble around like just I want to protect it as much as possible.
Yeah. Interesting. And
Yeah.
do you feel that your culture is represented generally within, for example, the American media? Do you think you're doing something different from other people? Um, is that something that's, well, obviously not unique to you,
Yeah.
but is that a point of difference for you?
There is a change happening with media. I think a lot of brands and just companies are realizing that hiring people who are actually in the streets, who are actually doing the work, who know what they're doing, is the best route to go. There's no like why force something and then when it's out to the world, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because we
Mm,
can't relate to it. Hiring people who get the work, who get the word, who get the language, I think that's the best way to go and just keep it authentic. Because again, this project was brought to me and I only did it because it felt right. And the people who are actually a part of it, like Koval, like Danielle, it just felt right to do it because these are my people. These people get me. We
mm,
speak the same language. And I think that's the best way to always approach anything in life. It just has to feel authentic to what you do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And do you sort of feel a sense of responsibility to your community in what you produce?
Yes and no. And I think that's the big part of the Latino community is that um, we feel like we have to kind of push like hold that baton, but at times like we can't put that pressure on us because we have to break that like generational like that we just had to break that because I've carried that for a while
Mm,
and it gets a little tough because it's like wait, I started creating because I wanted to feel free. I wanted my voice to be heard. I also want to protect my culture, but then it's also like, one, with what's happening in your life, moments like this, you have to be very mindful and very careful on how you say things and including everyone and not just saying only Black Latinos. There's also white Latinos. There's like, you just can't
mm,
base it off of just one thing. You kind of just have to make it more of a broad thing. So yeah,
yeah.
it's a yes and a no when it comes to just like kind of like taking on that responsibility of making sure that everybody's represented right because I didn't have that growing up and I wanted to just make sure like the next person coming before after me has something to look up like oh Juan did this Juan that's cool I'm seeing Juan doing this and it feels authentic and I would love to do that as well one day in my life. But yeah.
Sounds great, yeah. Um, and by the sounds of it, younger people who are now coming up and becoming photographers will have a very different view of it than you do. Um, and they've technology will give them greater opportunities, but
Right.
then again, there's probably more competition, more people doing it, more people who think they're a photographer because they've got a following on Instagram.
Right.
What's your advice to young people who think they want to become a photographer? Is there a kind of common thread of advice that you give them in how to pursue that?
Yeah, something that I told myself when I first got my big project, it was to never forget why I started photography, and it was to follow that little voice saying, "Juan, your story matters." And
Mm,
I think coming from a place of just honesty helps as well. Like you just have to be real with yourself. It's like, why do I want to do this with anything in life? But with photography, mostly you are creating this story. You are like just documenting. So you have to be very mindful of like, do I want to do this or not? But at the end of the day, just
mm,
be authentic and true to yourself, and you'll create the best work. And not also just not um, seeking validation from different companies, different brands, different magazines, people in general. Create for yourself, and I think that will just help you kind of just breathe a bit and put your shoulders back because those are things that I told myself as I went through in my career with photography. And to this day, it's like one, you're creating for yourself first, and then for the brand because you brought me onto a project because you love my work or you respect my work. So let's meet in the middle. Like let's respect each other and let's create some art. So I think that's always the best route to go. So just creating for yourself and be authentic to yourself and never losing yourself in the process of just art and just being true to yourself.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, a related question, I guess, is that do you feel that photographers, particularly photographers in Los Angeles where you live, um, do you think there is a community amongst photographers? Because on the one hand, you're you're all doing the same thing, you're all kind of living the dream. On the other hand, you're all fighting for the same work.
Mhm.
How does do you sort of feel like you're part of a wider photography community?
Yeah, I wouldn't say fighting for the same work because I have a bunch of friends in the photography game, and I kid you not, if I can't do a project, I'll hit up my boy like, "Hey, I can't do this, jump on it." So I think it's just like a mutual thing of like we're all in this. There's space for all of us. There's not like we don't have to like compete and again, I'm only competitive with myself. I can only speak for myself as well.
Mm,
There's work for all of us. There's nothing but space for all of us. And I think creating the community around that has always been my approach when I just speak to other photographers in the game. It's all love. It's all love. Starting with love just spreads even more love, especially with photography, because again, people are competitive, but that's not my MO. That was never been, it would never be in my MO. I'm all for just let's all create a space of just unity. Let's be real about it
mm,
all. Like let's just create. And I know I know for a fact there's space for all this because again, all of my friends are working. If that was the case, one person would have just worked. Would have been working. So it's all love. It's all love at the end of the day. Yeah.
excellent, excellent. Um, you're still pretty young, and yet you've already photographed a lot of quite famous people. Um, how how important is it when you're creating when you're working with famous people? How different is it from doing, say, street photography or working with ordinary people in inverted commas?
Yeah.
And how do you approach that?
You know what's so funny? My approach to every single photo I've taken has been the same. Um, I I'm always honest, and that also goes to how I was raised. It was based off honesty. My
Mm,
family is Dominican. We're very loud and honest, but we start with love. And I think working with celebrities or famous people, they want to be seen. They want to be heard. Like we're all human. Like let's just take a breath. Let's remove that like whole like oh I have to look amazing. My honesty, I think it's what makes anyone and everyone comfortable that I work with. I think and that's always the best way to go with working with celebrities because everyone wants to just be treated like a human. They're always under the microscopic eye and just like waiting for something to look bad or just feel bad. I think that's always been my approach with everything that I do has always been honesty, and I think that's what makes everyone that I work with feel comfortable. Um, and that helps, and that helps me. Like, and my biggest compliment when I work with anyone, celebrities, they're always like, "Juan, you make me feel comfortable," and I feel like, okay, my job is done. My job is done because as a human being, I want to be looked as a human first, and I think that's always
mm.
been reciprocated when working with celebrities. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Um, who inspired you? I mean, you've said about the inspiration of your grandmother and your family,
hmm
but in terms of photographers and other creatives, was there anyone who you sort of thought, I want to be like that when you were younger?
Not I want to be like that, but definitely inspired by her. Her name is Renelle Madrano, an amazing Dominican photographer from the Bronx. She was
Mm,
one of the first photographers to kind of bring me in and be under her wing. I did like probably like 4 projects with her, but I saw how she moved and seeing a black Latina just work the room and just step in her essence and not really care what people thought about her was beautiful because I was raised by black Latinas and it just kind of reminded me of how powerful women are and how much respect we need to give our black Latinas in this space because they're here. They're here, they've been
hmm
here. And something with Renell that I will always remember is like, Juan, stay true to yourself. Stay true to yourself. Work will come. Don't stress, but just don't stop creating. So I always, even to this day, I'm always Renell, you've helped me a lot to this day. So yeah, Renell Madrano is like a huge inspiration, and hopefully she sees this because I always want to give flowers to the people who have a huge influence in my life, and she was definitely one of them.
fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic. Excellent. Well, I think that's all my questions. So I think all that there is left to do is if you can indulge me, because I have never high-fived someone in virtual
Right, that would be
reality
so cool.
before. Can we give that a go?
Let's try
Right,
it.
after three, one,
Yep.
two, three.
We
Way,
did it.
yes! Little
I
bit of a
love
fumble, but
Yeah, we made it work.
that was great.
That
Right.
was awesome,
Thanks a
man.
lot for your
Thank
time,
you.
and
Uh,
yeah, really
Thank
great
you
to
so
meet you.
much.
And
No, likewise. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.